Men in Black. Some people who have made a UFO sighting or had a close encounter subsequently receive strange visits from sinister men in black who harass, threaten, and intimidate them to prevent them from talking about their experience. They usually appear even before the witness has reported the UFO incident and must therefore have access to information that is not publicly available. UFO investigators have also suffered harassment from MIBs. The person who receives the visit is usually alone, and no MIBs have ever been caught or interrogated. As far as is known, MIB victims who have ignored the threats have not suffered as a result. MIBs sometimes work alone, and sometimes in twos or threes. They may arrive in a large black car, often an out-of-date model, with license plates, which later turn out to be false. They wear dark suits, dark hats, dark ties, dark shoes and socks, but white shirts, and witnesses often remark on their immaculates turnout in seemingly brand new clothes. They are often dark-complexioned, perhaps Oriental-looking, and frail. Conforming to a stereotyped CIA image, they claim to be government agents, or produce identity cards which prove false. Sometimes they masquerade as journalists, insurance salesmen, or Air Force personnel. Their movements are stiff, their manner formal and cold, their faces unsmiling and expressionless, their stilted speech reminiscent of B-movie dialogue. In one case, a MIB had a large tape recorder with him, but didn't know how to operate it. Sometimes there is no personal visit, only a phone call, or there's no black car, only an abrupt appearance and disappearance. In May 1975, 2 weeks after a dramatic UFO sighting from his plane, a sighting confirmed on the radar screens at Mexico City Airport, a young pilot was pursued down the freeway by 4 black-suited Scandinavian-looking men in a black limousine. After forcing him to the side of the road, they warned him not to discuss his sighting. The pilot was on his way to do a television interview. A month later, one of the strangers reappeared and threatened him again, while he was on his way to a hotel, to talk to the prominent UFO investigator Allen Hynek. He described the MIBs as tall and strangely white, and said he never saw them blink. On the evening of 11 September 1976, Herbert Hopkins, a family physician from Maine, who was studying a UFO incident, was alone at home when a man claiming to be a UFO researcher phoned to ask if he could visit to discuss the case. He claimed he was from a UFO organization that was later found not to exist. The doctor agreed, and as soon as the phone call ended, he switched on the back porch light only to see the man already climbing the porch steps. The man was black-suited, bald, had dead white skin, no eyebrows or eyelashes, and wore bright red lipstick. He sat almost motionless, barely opening a slit-like toothless mouth. He told Hopkins that he had 2 coins in his left pocket. This was correct. He instructed him to put 1 coin on the palm of his hand. Hopkins then saw the coin gradually fade into a vaporous blue fuzzy ball, and vanish. Neither you nor anyone else on this plane will ever see that coin again, said the visitor. Having asked Hopkins to destroy any tapes, correspondence, or literature he had on the UFO case he was studying, the MIB rose unsteadily, saying, "My energy is running low, must go now, goodbye." On leaving the house, he walked towards a bright blue-white light shining in the driveway. Hopkins assumed this to belong to the visitor's car, though he neither saw nor heard it leave. Marks in the center of the drive, not those of car tires, vanished by the next day. In shock, Hopkins erased the tapes and abandoned the UFO case. He never heard from his visitor again. The following incident occurred during the Mothman visitations in West Virginia. One night in January 1967, Mary Hyre, a reporter who had written extensively about the local sightings, was working late in her office when a man walked in the door. He was about 4 feet 6 inches tall. Although the outside temperature was well below freezing, he was wearing nothing but a short-sleeved blue shirt and thin blue trousers. His eyes were dark and deep-set, and he wore thick lens glasses. He had long, black hair that was cut squarely. He spoke in a hard-to-understand sing-song manner, like a recording, and asked for directions to Welsh, West Virginia. Hire found him terrifying. He kept getting closer and closer to me, she said, his funny eyes staring at me almost hypnotically alarmed. She summoned the newspaper's circulation manager to her office, and together they spoke to the strange man, who seemed to know more about West Virginia than they did. At one point, the telephone rang, and while Hire was answering it, the little man picked up a pen from her desk and looked at it in amazement, as if he had never seen one before. When Hire told him he could have it, he gave a loud, peculiar laugh, ran outside and disappeared round a corner. Several weeks later, Hire was crossing the street near her office, and saw the same little man. He seemed startled when he realized that she was watching him, turned away quickly and ran for a large black car that suddenly came around the corner. He climbed in and it quickly drove away. By this time, most of the Muffman sightings had come to an end. But on 15 December 1967, the 700-foot bridge linking Point Pleasant to Ohio suddenly collapsed while filled with rush-hour traffic. Dozens of vehicles plunged into the Ohio River and 46 people were killed. During Christmas week, a short, dark-skinned man entered Mary Hire's office. He was dressed in a black suit, with a black tie, and looked vaguely Oriental. He had high cheekbones, narrow eyes, and an unidentified accent. He was not interested in the bridge disaster, but wanted to know about local UFO sightings. Hire was too busy to talk with him, and handed him a file of related press clippings. He was not interested in them and insisted on speaking with her. She finally dismissed him from her office. That same night, an identical-looking man visited the homes of several witnesses in the area, who had reported seeing lights in the sky. He made all of them very uneasy and uncomfortable, and while he claimed to be a reporter from Cambridge, Ohio, he inadvertently admitted that he did not know where Columbus, Ohio, was, even though the two towns are just a few miles apart. John Keel says that MIB behavior is reminiscent of the fairy hoaxes and games of an earlier epoch. Other researchers regard MIBs as a form of demonic psychic entity. As Michael Grosso says, MIBs seem to slide in and out of reality, behaving like phantoms or nightmares one moment, and assuming a daylight actuality the next. The MIB phenomenon is probably fueled by paranoia on the part of witnesses and ufologists. Keel points out that groups investigating the assassination of President Kennedy have suffered harassment similar to that experienced by UFO researchers. Their telephones go haywire, they are followed by mysterious cars and suspicious Oriental-looking gentlemen, and their mail gets fouled up. Students of witchcraft, members of fanatical religious groups, and even members of civil rights movements and both right and left-wing political groups all become victims of this harassment. And each group tries to find a cause or culprit to explain it, the most popular being the CIA or FBI. Thousands of people are undergoing this kind of harassment continually, and no government agency is big enough, has enough personnel or a big enough budget to be the blame for all these incidents. Nor would any responsible government agency be motivated to spend a fortune to harass teenage UFO buffs and little old ladies collecting clippings about John F. Kennedy. It seems that anybody involved in controversial research, who has to confront widespread hostility, and is liable to paranoia, may find themselves suffering similar harassment. For instance, T. Henry Moray invented a radiant energy machine that converted space energy into usable power, and was able to produce more energy that was required to run it. Several scientists examined it and were convinced it was genuine. However, Moray also faced tremendous skepticism and opposition, had problems obtaining patents for his device, and became very suspicious. He began to suffer strange forms of harassment. He became the object of death threats, and both he and his wife were shot at a number of times. The Morays decided to order a bulletproof car. One of his sons remembered being driven around town, when the car was hit by a hail of bullets fired from a mysterious black sedan. Another son says his mother received a string of anonymous phone calls threatening their lives. In one of them, she was told that her husband's life wasn't worth a plug nickel unless he cooperated with the Colors agents over the radiant energy machine. Moray's home and laboratory were repeatedly broken into, but the machine was never stolen. In a subsequent incident, Moray was shot in the leg while working in the laboratory. Moray firmly believed that this was all part of a plot to get him to hand over the invention.